seagulls follow the shore. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you.
And as we say now in my country, they brought the bus and they left the bus in front of the goal.
And the guy's talking absolute nonsense. Never heard so much rubbish in my life.
Normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
I'm telling you, don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Yes, it's the Monday Club on a Monday. Miracles never cease. And just like miracles never ceasing, a bit like Celtic's form, because Celtic's form right now is a joke. It was a brilliant weekend being a Celtic fan. Yet again, we extended the gap at the top. Seems to go under the radar these days, you know what I mean? Whilst everyone's accumulating their mad run of victories in the league or whatever, but we're actually further ahead yet again after the weekend's concluded. We've got a game tomorrow night as well, 2 nights' time. I keep thinking today's Tuesday. We've got a game in 2 nights' time as well, which is going to be back to league business. We've got a Scottish Cup quarter-final, which is mouth-watering, easy for me to say, on the horizon this weekend. And to discuss it all, we are joined, as always, on a Monday by Jonathan Boyce and a wee special guest. The judge is in the house, Mark Kearney. Lads, how we doing?
I'm doing very well, mate. Yourself?
Jamming, Mark. Good to have you back on, mate. I know you missed yesterday. Mate. So it's good to have you back on a Monday for a wee change. Just to add a wee bit of spice. It's actually quite funny because look at one of the comments that came in. Has Mark left the bus? I said, I just been holding my beer, Thomas.
That's one show.
They're just missing you, mate. They're just missing you.
Well, I'm here to give them a wee bit of a reminder of how shit my comments are, my opinions are.
Not at all. Well, we'll get all that good stuff out the road and then we're going to get stuck into an action-packed Monday night as we always do. All that good stuff means hit the subscribe button if you've not. We seem to have seen a big spike in subscribers. We've jumped up another 10 or something today already. So I'd just like to say to all the new subscribers, well done, because you made the right decision. I'm only kidding. Thank you for subscribing. Make sure you hit that like button as well if you're in the live chat tonight and on the passenger seats, because that gets us all the traction, makes the bus busier, all that carry on. If you want to become a Bhoycie Bus member, like Joe Brown, like Jim Dolan, like Sean the Mac, like Phil McKinley, like 1888 CFC, like Patrick McLaughlin, like Balls to the Walls, then feel free to do so. I can't thank you enough. But it is completely, remember, optional. All the content is free on the bus, as always. If you want to get a wee bumblebee shut, we are closing in on getting the order submitted. Once the order's submitted, I doubt we'll do another one. So get your names in. Give me an email, crookedarm@ymail.com. You can send a PayPal directly to that, £40 if you want to buy the shirt with optional postage and packaging. Or if you don't have PayPal, drop me an email at crookedarm@ymail.com. I'll fire you my bank details. We are closing in on popping that order in, and us on the podcast are looking forward to getting our shirts. You know, we've already put our pre-order in for those, courtesy of our sponsors, Har Barber. So we're looking forward to, flashing them on stage, man, and showing them off. That'll be fun. And I say on stage, just mean on this tiny wee camera thing. Obviously, as well, don't forget, tasty discounts at the checkout. A tasty 12.5% off, piesports.com. If you're feeling peckish and you want to watch the football with the best of pies, and the boys will tell you that, then all you have to do is head over there and you get a wee discount just for watching the bus. How good is that? Anyway, that's the quickest I've got all that good stuff out the road. Oh, and also a big shout out to everyone who is listening on your podcast platform, Spotify, whatever it may be. Our numbers for the audio downloads are rocketing. And we did our record ever for the League Cup final, nearly 200 audio downloads. Might not sound a lot, but we're predominantly just a YouTube channel. So for us, that's loads. So a big thank you to all you who are choosing not to look at our coupons, but just listen to our nonsense. In fairness, I do have a Facebook video, so I totally understand. Right, let's get on with this week's show. Jonathan, it was a good weekend. I'll leave the opening to you.
Yes, it was a pretty good weekend, Russell. Scream 6 is out at the cinema you might be seeing on Friday night. We were treated to our own thriller at St Mirren on Sunday. I have to say it was a bit of a jumpy start when St Mirren managed to get themselves 1-0 up in the early stages. It was one that gave us a wee bit of a fright for us Celtic fans. But then at half-time, we decided we were going to slash up the newspaper headlines that were being written about us. Celtic would go on to confirm a commanding lead at the top once again. And the only people that would have been in for a fright in that second half were the St Mirren players, the St Mirren manager, the St Mirren supporters, but most importantly, our great rivals who would have been watching that from behind the couch, if indeed they weren't so squeamish at the sight of Celtic putting goal after goal past the St Mirren team that they'd had to turn off because they were feeling so nauseous. I have to say it was an excellent weekend performance in that second half, and only confirms why we are going to be league champions this season.
You've been saying it for a while now, Mark. Jonathan's confident. You can't help but be feeling confident. We did a PMP yesterday afternoon, and we were sort of discussing the fact that even if there hadn't been the red card, right, and we'll probably talk about VAR at some point today, right, because it's naturally going to come up, as it always seems to do these days. But, even if St Mirren stay with 11 men, now, whilst I think they deployed a very decent game plan in that first half, there's no doubt in my mind at some point Celtic just click into gear. They go through the gears, in fact. And once they do that and they find that peak form that's required, they will get the result that's needed right now. Such as the confidence in the team, such as the options we've got from the squad depth that's on the bench. And I just feel the belief as well that they just won't be beat now. Do you know what I mean? That's how they feel between now and the end of the season domestically. I wonder what the odds are on Celtic dropping a game, and I'm including the cups. Or losing a game, I should say. Not dropping a game. Losing a game. I think you get good odds on that. And I think that's the belief that's within the team. And yes, okay, the fact that Mirren went to 10 men compounded it. Celtic ended up getting 5 goals. But I still think we would have turned that around. How did you feel yesterday watching it?
I thought the first half, Celtic looked like it was a battle that they weren't able to compete in. I thought they were out-muscled and they were kind of out-fought. But no, I don't mean mentally fought, but I just thought the actual physical battle wasn't for Celtic. I think we picked the wrong striker, quite honestly. I thought the game Kyogo had was the game that we all knew Kyogo was going to have on that pitch against 10 defenders. Getting behind a defence that start holding the line, that wasn't going to happen. It was going to be a game for a target man. And what Celtic's game plan was to put in 496,000 crosses into the box and hope somebody got in the end of it. And to do that to a 5'2" striker just wasn't going to work, Bhoycie.
No.
Second half, when you're watching the match, it's your gift, as you say, as a fan, to panic. But the players, this is what they do Monday to Friday. That they trust the system, and they trust the process in terms of they know how to break a team down. They know how to batter a team, and this psychologically, they're mentally they will eventually drop their standards, and they will make mistakes, and Celtic will just pick them off. I'm sure at half time, even if it was 11v11, that the system would have probably stayed the same. Although I think Abada was going to come on the second half regardless. But I think that eventually Celtic would have cracked them, I think, and albeit the 5 goals made it sound like it was comfortable. But at half time, I'll tell you something, if it went into half time 11 men, I would have definitely been. I wouldn't have been as confident as what I was at half time when it went to 10 men. I thought St Mirren's game plan was over when they get a player sent off, because it just puts so much doubt in the players' minds, and it also gives every man that extra bit of work. And at that level, the concentration goes before the fitness goes.
That's very true, and it was just a momentary, lack of concentration. I can't even speak right again, Jonathan. What's happening to me here? But it was just a lack.
You've been drinking?
No, God no. But it's one moment against Celtic, and that's the thing is that's how costly it was. That moment of lack of concentration from a St Mirren player leads to a red card, potentially a penalty. We can talk about that. But undeniably, it was that costly. At least the player being sent off. Kyogo's touched the ball twice by this point, Jonathan, in the game. He's only touched it twice. Doesn't even touch it in that point, wee sort of sequence of play. Yet we find ourselves a man up, and Mark's probably right. You go in at half time, and your tails are slightly more up than what they would have been. Albeit, my honest opinion was I didn't feel the same. It's not going to be our day sort of vibe that sometimes you can't. And I take the point about the crosses, because I did sort of roll my eyes when I was seeing them as well, Mark. I thought, oh, fucking hell, that ain't going to work. That's not the answer, just hitting it and hoping it into the box. He's not that type of striker. Maybe they'll bring on O if they're going to carry on doing that sort of thing. But Jonathan, what actually I found at halftime was Celtic, albeit subconsciously you're aware, right, they're down to 10 men. But I don't think they changed the game plan that much. They made one personnel change. I envisaged they were going to do the typical hat-trick of subs at half-time. I thought, I didn't want to see that, because then I will start getting the heebie-jeebies again. But the one sub, do you know what I mean? But the one sub, it could have been Maeda or Jota. Let's be honest, that was a toss of a coin. But Angie gets it absolutely bad.
Poor boy.
Yeah, again, St Mirren doesn't work for him. But I think, in terms of the wide players, I was like, Maeda and Jota could go off, or either or. He takes off Maeda. Abada's impact was fantastic. And of course, it's Jota who gets the equalising goal, which I forgot about on PMP yesterday.
I think Mark makes a good point. So the red card, it's certainly a decisive moment in the game. I didn't think we'd really been in the match at all up until that point. Really, we weren't creating very much. The balls were just getting hoofed into the box, and it was kind of feeling like one of those sort of games where we were lacking a little bit of creativity. And it was certainly the wide players that weren't really doing anything at all for me in the first half. And I was tempted to have hooked both of them. I thought Postecoglou might have hooked both of them at half time. You could tell he wasn't happy with it, because there's actually a clip right when the half-time whistle goes where he does gesture, who obviously to Abada it must have been, but you weren't sure when you were watching it live who exactly it was on the bench to tell him to start warming up. So you knew the substitution or substitutions were coming. But I think obviously with the red card happening, St Mirren's game plan then goes out the window. They don't have the out ball to then start asking us questions and trying to get themselves up the park, and it pretty much becomes a game of attack versus defence in the second half. And with St Mirren not able to really get up the pitch, they're having to do a lot of extra running around, and Celtic exploited it brilliantly in the second half. Ange makes the correct call by taking off Maeda and leaving Jota on the pitch, because Jota ends up having a fantastic second half performance. But it just goes to show with Celtic that they keep going. I felt once St Mirren go down to 10 men, I wasn't fully convinced it'd be a 5-1 game. But I certainly thought Celtic would have enough in the tank to turn it around. And once they get the early goal at the start of the second half, there was only ever going to be one winner. But I think if going back to Mark's comment, if St Mirren had managed to keep 11 men on the park and the boy hasn't made such a costly mistake for them, the second half I think would have been a lot tighter, and it would have been a bit more nerve-wracking. Although, having said that, I still think Celtic would have had the answers, such as the strength and depth in the squad.
Well, I think the evidence is there that Celtic would have had the answers as well. I mean, Mark, that was 250 goals racked up in 99 games under Postecoglou at the weekend. This season, we've had 19 different scorers just in the Premier League alone. That is baffling stats. Do you know what I mean? The goals are coming from everywhere. They're coming thick and fast. Teams can't live with us once we click into that gear. Whilst the first half, I totally take your point. And we're maybe due, some sort of a first half of disappointment. It should come with the territory. We're now looking at a league table with, was it 25 wins, 1 draw, and that was away at your nearest rivals where you didn't need to win. They needed to win. You got the draw that was needed. And the other one, obviously, that shock defeat at St Mirren last time round, which you're going to expect blips along the road. This has been nearly flawless this season. And it's the manner of the amount of goals that we've scored, the manner we're putting teams away. And yeah, even when faced with a bit of adversity the weekend there, that second half, what I loved about the team. And this is the spirit I'm wanting to talk about a wee bit tonight, because I think you can see it for the celebrations for the players. I touched on it a wee bit yesterday. Jota and Johnston, particularly, very animated. But also, it's the fact that they go right to the 90th minute, where it's Ange giving Cameron Carter-Vickers a wee sort of jokingly telling off, for didn't be trying that shite. Do you know what I mean? We're 5-1 up. But that's the standards that we're being held to right now. And I think it's the standards the team's striving for. 250 goals, Matt. 19 different scorers this season in the league alone. Talk me through that, mate. This is frightening, these sort of numbers.
Well, the thing is as well, you've got guys like Abada, who's, I'd probably say, you're lucky if the guy started 10 games this season. He's got 12 goals already. I don't know how many assists he's got. That's numbers that you would expect for a second choice striker. I mean, you've got guys like Jota hitting nearly 10 goals. You know what I mean? For a winger, you've got Abada. I mean, get Maeda, he's getting too close to that 20 goal mark that David Lowe promised me he would get. It's even that, it's getting to the stage now where, I mean, you remember in the past we were shouting about where we're getting goals for our centre backs. We were always saying that, listen, no team can rely on the strikers. We need a centre back pair to maybe get 10 goals between the two of them minimum. No, I'm even relying on them to go up the park and grab a last minute winner. You've got goals out of the park, and it's not even that we've got goals out of the park. The subs we're making, I mean, we're bringing on guys like Haksabanovic. He's got a goal in him. We're bringing on even guys who are maybe third and fourth in the pecking order, like Turnbull. He's got goals in him. There's goals all over the place, and the record of 250 goals in 99 games, was it?
99, Mark. 99 games.
I mean, that's easy maths. That's 2.5 goals per match, and when you actually consider that the vast majority of the games of the Celtic have been scoring goals in the last quarter of the match. Now, see teams that are winning teams score goals early and they score goals late, right? But seeing you're winning 3-4-0 and you're still pushing for a fifth and a sixth with 10 minutes to go, that shows you've got a hunger for entertaining the fans. That's never stopped. To me, it's just a slogan, but you can also see it in action as well. When you see players running down, you've seen players running down and taking quick corner kicks in the 91st minute when it's 4-0 up. You go, there's no need for you to do that. I mean, how many goals have we seen and you've said there was no need for that run, there was no need for that extra effort? We appreciate it and we get a good goal at it, but we forgive you for just doing the bare minimum 95th minute when you're 5-0 up. But no, you pushed and you got 2 goals. And you go, it's almost like Martin Hill territory when we were beating teams 5 and 6-0 and you're going,
totally.
You've got Stan Petrov chasing down a corner and you're going, you don't have to do that, mate. And you're going, that's the effort, it's the teamwork. And you touched on it there. When Celtic are scoring goals, it's like, I mean, there's even a clip I watched on a unique angle today, and he's never far-fetched. You've seen Joe Hart, and he's shouting, oh, and he's fist-pumping, and the full team is just happy for each other. There's no superstar in this team. In fact, the only one you would say is a standout amongst them all is Kyogo, but it's because of how infectious he is. You can tell the players just love him. It's not like we've got like a Larson figure who the players just can't help but adore. Like he's the god, and even the players know he's a god. This is a guy who the players just hold in a high regard. They're like, this guy is just an infectious character. The fans love him, we love him, and And I think that's like, see, you're building a team and we're going to lose players, we all know that. But seeing you've got a fan base and a manager and a support and a team that's just all one, it takes a lot of hard work to break that up, mate. You know what I mean? It takes more than one bad transfer window or one big player being sold. And the goals you're seeing through the park is just 11 players, including the goalkeeper, because he starts a lot of attacks, just fighting for each other. If it's the first minute or the 91st minute, and as a Celtic fan, I love to see that, mate.
Couldn't agree more, Mark. You've nailed it. You've nailed it, pal. Because Jonathan, the stats that I'm hitting Mark with there that he's just sort of expanded on are frightening. And it is, you sound the klaxon all you want. I mean, it is literally the first time you've seen the team is pulling in the same direction. They feel like when they play a wee bit, they're like fans. And I know that's obviously a wee bit contrived when you consider the corners of the globe they've all came from and the fact that they probably, their knowledge of Celtic would have been limited before they arrived. But for whatever reason, now they're there, they're getting it. And they're getting it from very early on. Alistair Johnson, it's almost a cliche now, but it feels like he's been at Celtic way longer than he has. I was delighted when he got his goal. I mean, Steve O'Matt was in the comments earlier. Steve, big shout out to you, mate. Hope you're good. And he was saying, the ball hits the net and it's Greg Taylor just following it up and rattling it into the empty goal, just screaming yes. And I know that sounds very trivial, but again, it sort of epitomises that sort of team spirit. I thought Jota, when he tore away, you look at wingers, they tend to be a wee bit temperamental, Jonathan. If it's not their day, it's and throwing their arms about. He gets to go and he is pumped up, mate. Do you know what I mean? You can see it. And I thought the reaction when Johnston put us 2-1 up, everyone jumping on him, he was going, he was getting it loudly as well. Do you know what I mean? And I just think there's a real unity about us. And obviously winning games is brilliant, Jonathan. When this is coming together here and the football we're playing is actually, this is what we do in the training ground and we're seeing it in the park. Of course, morale's going to be high. But the one thing is, complacency can creep in. It can be allowed to creep in at times, particularly for younger players. Whereas we seem to have a manager here who just, the standards that Mark's talking about in 94th, 95th minute, I think he sets and the players follow, but the players have bought into it 100%. And I thought the moment with Ange and Cameron carpet slippers was, I mean, it's an iconic gif now already. Do you know what I mean, Ange? Pulling that mad face. But the thing was with it, there was a hidden message, an underlying message there that, no, just because we're 5-1 up, don't start fucking about with what we do. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not on the menu. And, there is that underlying message for that. I actually think it's brilliant. And obviously, Ange has done it, tongue in cheek, and everyone's going to be, patting each other in the back, in the dressing room after. But it was also just a wee reminder, the reason we've got to this place, and the reason we have this amount of points clear, the reason I'm talking about these freakish numbers of goals and goal scorers is because the attitude has got to be there from minute 1 to minute 94, 95, whatever it may be. Also, notwithstanding that, it also showed me, even in adversity, we don't change what we do. So see, when we're 5-1 up, like Mark's saying there, you don't need to be chasing everyone down. We're fans, we're going, hey, listen, we're just chuffed with your day's work. Honestly, it's all good. I can forgive you not chasing that ball down or whatever. But the thing is, that's okay, like thinking that. But what Ange doesn't want to creep in is that as a mindset, even as a 1% mindset at any given time. Because yesterday it was adversity we were in. Don't change. Think, just get better at doing what we do. Go back the second half, you're going to be better than what you were in the first. But you never lose sight and you never lose your standards of what it is you're trying to do. Because there will be bumps in the road. But I think that's the beauty of it is when we're maybe a goal down, we don't change what we do. When we're 5-1 up, we don't change what we do. And that message seems to be right across the board. And like I was touching on there, John, I think the spirit in the team is so good right now.
Oh, 100%. I think it all goes back to that initial training session that he done where he came out with those words that, are always going to be now synonymous with Ange Postecoglou. We never stop, and they just don't stop at all. With Celtic, I think Postecoglou just has the standards exactly where he wants it. And it goes back again to the strength of depth he has in the squad, because there's not many players there that can be guaranteed to be starting. If their attitude isn't quite right, Postecoglou has a number of options in most positions that he can actually switch people around. So that keeps people on their toes. If they're wanting to get minutes and be starting games, then they need to be showing the right attitudes in training. And albeit you might have a 9-point lead in the league title race. But Postecoglou is shrewd enough to know no titles have been handed out quite yet, as much as Celtic are very much in the box seat to do so. He'll be keeping one eye on everything that's going on in Scottish football just now. And you've got to bear in mind, despite the fact we like to poke fun at Rangers, they have been on a decent run themselves in the league. And if Celtic hadn't been on this flawless record, the title race might have became a bit closer. So, there's a lot of different variable factors. And I think Postecoglou is fully aware, acutely aware, you could say, of how quickly things can change in football. And I think that's why he's managed to nail that into the players. And I think, you've got a few of them anyway that would just buy straight into that. Your likes of Callum McGregor or Joe Hart's, for example, I think because they've been over the mill so many times in successful squads throughout their careers, then that also lends itself on the pitch to remind the other players of the standards that the club has set. But I think, when you're 5-1 up and he's still been able to give it a little bit of cheek with Cameron Carter-Vickers, and Carter-Vickers is almost not entirely sure how to react to him. He's having a wee chuckle, but deep down Carter-Vickers knows exactly what the message is that Postecoglou was getting across to him, and whilst it's done in a joking way, the manager is still getting his point across. I think that is one of the best things about Ange Postecoglou as a manager, is he knows how to make his point, in small instances like that, but he can do it with a little bit of humour from time to time. And I think, even when things aren't necessarily going Celtic's way, and I know they have been now for a while, but I think even when, our backs have been up against the wall, perhaps in the initial stages, I think Postecoglou is somebody that knows how to get the players performing without, giving them the sort of hairdryer treatment that a lot of the modern day footballers don't necessarily appreciate anymore. And he manages to find a way to get the best out of the players. And because they've all got that buy-in to what Postecoglou has been doing now for almost 2 years at the club, the results are all just coming together. And he is putting together things which are similar to Martin O'Neill. I would agree absolutely with what Mark's saying. It does have shades of O'Neill's time, has shades of Rodgers' Invincibles about it, what the squad is doing. It's very special indeed. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they've still got a chance at possibly getting a new record points tally this season. Certainly could happen. Yeah, certainly could happen. And, you wouldn't put it past them, would you?
But definitely. I mean, that's the next things. I mean, I always remember, Matt, with the Invincibles run, remember the unbeaten run where it was like, remember it got to like 49, I think it was about 49 games we were at, and I think we scored really late on. I mean, the goal had no bearing on where on the league table or anything like that. We were miles clear, but it was like, you started panicking about the sequence, the unbeaten sequence, and I think that will be quite exciting towards the end of the season. We want 100 points, do you know what I mean? Or we want that points record, and suddenly the games take on a different sort of set of circumstances, a different sort of pressure that we'll put on ourselves as fans. I don't mean for the players' point of view, they just go out to do their job, do you know what I mean? But I think for our point of view, we'll start looking at it. Patrick's in there saying 106 is the record. We can get 109 potentially right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, that'll be definitely on our minds, I think, as fans. And we're allowed to do this, by the way. We're allowed to dream of hitting record points tallies and that. And I think we'll be gutted if, there was to be a defeat along the way and it cost us. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I just think these are different aspects that are becoming almost a reality. And this league form that we're in right now, we need to remember, isn't just this season. This is now, one defeat in, someone tell me in the comments, I can't remember. It's over 50 games anyway in the league.
I think it's one defeat since early September 2022, 2021.
53, I'm not going to say, that other number. 50s, mid-50s anyway. Man, these records are special. Jota referred to it as, he says it's not like pressure, it's like a healthy anxiety. I mean, he's got a better grasp of English language than fucking any of the three of us, I would imagine, by the way, when you actually listen to him talk. I think that's quite a refreshing thing to hear for him as well.
I think it's good because what happens is when you listen to football players talking, I say a lot, it's just sound bites, Bhoycie, but we've got a lot of good speakers in our dressing room. Arthur Johnson, I think he's had quite a lot of media training in his time. I think America, they do a lot of media training. I think they school them rather than just playing football. I think they actually teach him how to be a professional owner.
Just quickly, though, he doesn't give the generic media trained answers. Though,
no.
That's the difference for him.
No, I think if you ask him what colour the sky is, he'll tell you it's blue. You know what I mean? He'll not dance around it. He'll not be like a politician. And you ask a football player a question, and you can just it'll be A, B, or C is the answer. You know, it's never really that's why I stopped watching the press conferences. As you know, I don't really like listening to the same. But do you know something? See, when you've reached a stage in the season where even the players know the league's finished, and it is more or less finished. I mean, you never know what can happen, but it's finished in my opinion. But see, when there's goals beyond the finishing line, it helps keep the pressure on the players internally. But they're going, right, okay, there's been standards set at this club for 130 years. We've got a chance now to be the new standard. 106, and we'll do 108. Rodgers get 103 goals. All right, we've got 110. You know, and make them be the another O'Neill term. Make them be the benchmark for the next Celtic team coming in, and you're going to have players in that squad that have been through that have, like your Forrest, your McGregor, more so, that have sat in amongst some right good Celtic teams and have reached high standards. And this is a team full of players who are learning week in, week out what it means to play for Celtic. I think a lot of them have bought into it quite early, but it's not just because they've seen the club, they're enjoying the fans, they're enjoying the pressure. It's the mindset and within the training every day. I think the training on the last day of pre-season would be the training on the last day of the season under Ange Postecoglou. I don't think he draws a line under it and says, do you know what, we've done enough today. I think it's just a revolving door. It's constant. The progress is constant. And this is the thing with Ange Postecoglou. I can see why this guy has got to 57 without getting a big job. I understand there's teams that would overlook a guy playing in Australia and Asia. But how somebody's not tapped into that guy as a director of football, how that guy's philosophy in football, how that guy's got to this age and not being tapped up now is phenomenal. But it's to Celtic's credit they've got him. And when you actually look at how Celtic are performing after part financially, it's no small feat, and it's no coincidence that this guy is making new records for the club. He's everything he's putting before him. He's just pushing it aside, and whether that be financial records with turnover, whether that be how quickly he's turning players over and getting money back on them and getting rid of good big players and replacing them with absolute superstars for a fraction of the price in Scottish terms. I think that's an excellent credit to Ange Postecoglou. And one thing about this guy is I don't think you can ever get to a stage with this guy where he's going to sit down and say to you, do you know what, you've made it. And the only people that's going to see the benefit of that is the player himself in his career. But I think the fans are going to get the best out of Ange Postecoglou and this Celtic team. And every player that leaves this club under Ange Postecoglou will either leave because they're going to enrich themselves through giving us good performances, or they're not going to come up to his standards. And we've got a guy making the standards a very, very high bar, and it's all good for us, in my opinion.
No, you're spot on, mate. You're absolutely spot on. A couple of good wee comments coming in, Jonathan. So we're going to entertain a couple of comments that have starred in the live chat, which, you know, after about 13 months of doing the bus, Phil worked out that you could actually...
Phil did a crash course on how to start comments.
Yeah, well, you know, it only took 13 months. So this one's an interesting one for Sean the Mac. I had it up earlier. He says, O'Neill and Rodgers never had the complete squad that Ange has now. I think he's probably right there. I'll tell you my thinking behind that, though, is, and this isn't a slight on O'Neill or Rodgers, but they were very limited in the markets that they knew in terms of geographically, right? Mm-hmm. The markets they knew were going to involve inflated transfer fees, and naturally, the most of them are going to come from down south, all right? Yeah. That comes with, you know, X amount of tax added onto it, basically, just for being an ex-EPL player. So to actually fully, replenish that squad with those types of players would have cost the club too much money. Now, we can all argue there was underspending under Rodgers, which there was. But I also think, flip side, I mean, even the Piccini argument, the Castagna argument, these are guys at 9-10 million, which we know the board, whether rightly or wrongly, they're always going to be reluctant to be topping up squads with. Whereas Postecoglou's managed to be, he knows a mark, he knows various marks. We've got, You know, Bernabé was South America, one of very few players we've signed from there. You look at Alistair Johnson coming for Canada, you know, probably the first ever player we've signed directly for there, certainly for the first team. Then you've got this, you know, the J-League market, which we've tapped into numerous occasions. And of course, players dotted about from Europe as well. You know, Giakoumakis, who came in, he was Greek, came for the Dutch league. You know, Abada coming from Israel, things like this. So it's been right across the board where Ange sort of scoured these players, and that's probably helped him get this squad to what, as Sean's saying, you know, as complete as what it is.
Yeah, no, 100%. Postecoglou is able to put his net out fairly wide. Obviously, the Asian markets are what he knows best, so that is no surprise that he's had so much success going into the Asian markets and bringing players over from the J-Leagues. But even his record, you know, in bringing players in from Europe has been extremely good, you know, as well. I think it's been quite interesting with Postecoglou too, is that he's not actually really looked too much in the actual Scottish League for many players, which probably tells you something that he doesn't see much out there in terms of the rest of the division to actually go for, because, you know, it certainly was a thing that, you know, even under O'Neill, Celtic still picked up players from other SPL clubs. It happened with Brendan on a couple of occasions, you know, as well. Strachan was renowned for going into the other Scottish clubs and picking up players, but Postecoglou has obviously not seen anything that's impressed him, and he stuck to his guns on that one, which is also admirable as well, because I know that he'll have one this year.
Ballsy as. See, when you look back at where we were, Jonathan, right? And like this league title, remember the first one, that was coming with this £40 million jackpot at the end of it. You know, if Rangers were to get that, they could be debt-free and all this stuff. That's what we were thinking, and we might get left behind here. So it was a ballsy move to be bringing guys in from another continent at the other side of the world, wasn't it?
Yeah, oh no, 100%. I think we all knew that was a possible risk, and you know, he stuck very true to his guns there, because if that hadn't worked out, he'd have been given his daughters pretty quickly, I would have thought, because they perhaps wouldn't have been given as much time as, you know, like a certain player coming in from England would have if we knew their name, or, you know, players from the Scottish Premiership who he thought could do a job. We would be more likely to give them more time because they've proven themselves already to be good players. So there is that element to it. I mean, I just kind of want to touch back on the actual, you know, differences between the O'Neill squads and the Postecoglou squads and the Brendan Rodgers squad. They both all have one thing in common. When I was thinking about it, though, is that they're both Achilles' heels, and all three of those squads, I think, is actually the goalkeeper. Surprisingly, I think it's the Achilles' heel in all three of those squads. But yeah, no, I take the point that absolutely, when it comes to squad depth, I think Postecoglou's squad depth is even stronger than the likes of O'Neill's, you know, and Brendan Rodgers. When you're looking at the bench for impact substitutions when things aren't going your way, I think Postecoglou has that completely sussed with what he's done, and that's all credit to him for his dealings in the transfer market. Although I do think it's an interesting one, Mark, isn't it, that the goalkeepers all seem to, I mean, they all strike me with a bit of fear, to be honest, all three of the goalkeepers over those three teams.
I totally agree with you, mate. There is a kind of narrative among the Celtic fans that Joe Hart's biggest Achilles heel, as you say, is his Bhoyce's feet, and for us to have a goalkeeper playing a system where he's got to have the Bhoyce's feet just doesn't add up. But when you think about his shot stop ability, his shot stop is really good, and like Paul's wife. I lost track here. No, but when you think about the three keepers that you're talking about, I'm going to say Craig Gordon and Douglas. I don't know if we can count Gould under O'Neill. I think he left pretty quick.
No,
a lot of them they had flaws in their goalkeeping abilities. I know Joe Hart's no one for coming out and catching balls, but Douglas, for talk's sake, he wasn't very good at coming out. He was a constant flapper. Paul Africa a few world class saves, but he was also very, very susceptible to a blunder. Craig Gordon, we all know he could be a 10 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10. But Joe Hart, see what the three keepers that we're talking about just now, I'm more comfortable with Joe Hart because I've said before, see if we're losing the ball through a Joe Hart bad pass, that's an Ange Postecoglou production. And I'm, in my mind, got a mindset where Ange will account for that. You know what I mean? He will account for mistakes being made by certain players at certain times, and his system will be that it's covered 9 times out of 10. And to be honest with you, there was one game in Europe, I think we lost a goal directly because of a goalkeeping mistake. But see, directly, I don't think we've lost a goal yet in the league or domestically through a goalkeeping mistake as such. It's maybe been a case of a bad pass at Ibrox has led to Rangers getting momentum in a match. That's all that comes to mind. But that's very interesting because it seems to be the goalkeeping position. But what I will say is about the squad thing, you touched on it, Russell, about trying to get like players for England. And do you know what one thing Ange Postecoglou's got that O'Neill didn't have, or Rodgers, is the market he's getting into. He can persuade players to come in and say, like, bide your time because you're not going to be a 14 player. Whereas if we go to England and say, look, we've got a certain level of player who we want in our squad. If you go to an Aston Villa and say, right, we want your second choice right back to be our fighting choice right back. I don't think a guy comes for the EPL to fight for a Celtic jersey. You know what I mean? Whereas we're getting guys who have got similar ability, but are also willing to take the chance because I've been given a chance to come to Scotland and say, okay, I'm not expecting a game for the first 2-3 months, but I'm going to fight for it. But I think that's harder to persuade an English-based player to come up here and say, you're not Billy Big Boys anymore. You've came to Celtic and you've got a shirt to win. And that was the case with one of your favourite players, Chris Sutton. Boyce, he got shafted by England. He was told if he wanted his next England cap, he was going to have to go down and fight with the reserve team players. And he went like that. No. And that could be the English arrogance, and it could be the fact he's scoring goals in the Champions League against Juventus. But the guys we are buying, they have not had that opportunity to be the big fish yet. So they're kind of happy to come in and be of a certain standard, but still be happy to fight for that first team. And I don't think that O'Neill or Rodgers had that luxury.
No. I think that's a good point. One of the weird things is as well, though, I suppose on the contrast to that is O'Neill and Rodgers both had the buy-in power from a lot of the players down south that they did bring in because they had such reputations down there before they came. That's how maybe a Kolo Toure came up to Celtic. Do you know what I mean? I know he wasn't a great player for us, but would he have considered Celtic under Ronnie Dyler?
Scott Sinclair.
Do you know what I mean? Scott Sinclair. That was because of Rodgers. Like to Sutton, probably Lennon, stuff like that. Hartson was because of O'Neill. So it was like that's the flip side. But you couldn't go to that well as many times as Ange has been able to go to his markets because it's just out with the financial reach. So it's credit to him. There was another comment that came in, which I'm intrigued by here as well, because this I'm seeing cropping up quite a lot. And John Duncan brings it in, right? And he's saying he's worried that we keep buying too many Asian players, though. We need more Scottish lads like Nisbet, he's saying, right? Things like that. I don't necessarily subscribe to Nisbet. We're improving with Celtic, Scott John. But the Asian Cup thing seems to be concerning people, obviously, if that many players could go. But we've been down this avenue before. Celtic have the right, if more than 3 players are called up, to request postponements. Now, it might piss people off. It might cheese off whoever it is we've got lined up for fixtures in that given time. But if that's a rule that we can adopt and we can use to our advantage, Jonathan, we'll use it. There's no two ways that we'll go, 6-7 players away the Asian Cup. Fuck it, we'll just get our best anyway. If we think there's a rule there and a loophole there where we can go, aye guys, remember that rule, 15.2, that means that you can request a postponement of more than 3 players. We've got 7 away, so we need the next 2 games postponed and rescheduled. No bother. I mean, so I think when you take that into account, Jonathan, it's a case of, the Asian Cup thing might sound quite daunting, but I think Celtic will already have been acutely aware that the Asian Cup would be a regular, it's a regular tournament that occurs. They'll factored all that in, and I don't think they'll think twice about utilising that loophole, Jonathan.
Oh no, I don't think so at all. I'm sure Celtic have used it in the past, so they'll use it again if it's required. Celtic will. Well, it's not even really a loophole. If it's there in the rule book, then Celtic just have to quote the rules to the governing bodies, and the governing bodies will have no choice but to accept it. I think when a lot more of the concern sometimes comes with the fact of bringing so many players from, for example, the J League, is that when Postecoglou decides to call it a day, you could end up with a massive revamp of the squad going because you don't know how many of the players will end up staying loyal to Celtic or if they're there mainly because of Ange. And it goes back to the sort of conversations I guess we were just having there. where the likes of Scotty Sinclair really was in there and was because of a Brendan Rodgers production, and he ends up leaving. When Brendan goes, he doesn't hang around much into Lennon's tenure. And then there's other examples as well, even in O'Neill's era going into Strachan's, although I take it that it's more from perhaps a financial restructuring point of view from the club with some of those players at that time. But you do have that risk that when Postecoglou does eventually leave Celtic, if he's brought in, 7, 8, 9 players, perhaps by then, from, Asia or wherever, that have bought into his vision, how many of them are going to be willing to, hang around, post Postecoglou being in charge, and is the new manager going to take to these players, as well, and you could end up with quite a big rebuild and to have to do over what could be a very successful squad if the circumstances don't play out the way we want. And I think that is something that does concern fans slightly. I'm very confident Celtic will find a way to make it work, however it plays out, because some of these boys that he's brought in, he's going to be able to flip for millions and millions of pounds. He's going to be able to flip massive profits on some of them, which will free up money if Celtic do need to go back into the market and look at different options when the time comes for Postecoglou to call it a day. And I'm not saying that'll be soon, because as we know, he's already committed to the club just the other week, and he's already got laid down his sort of line on this, that he's going nowhere for the foreseeable future. But if in a few years that was to happen, it still wouldn't worry me, because I think there's going to be so much resale value in a lot of these players that even if one or two did decide they didn't want to carry on at Celtic post Postecoglou, we'd be okay to survive that. And I think that probably is more where the concern comes from, isn't it, Mark? Would you say that's kind of where you would have more concern with him signing players from that sort of area, is perhaps when Postecoglou decides to call it a day, that the players might follow him to whatever his next club may be?
I love this. The judge is just getting interrogated by both Boyce'S tonight. Do you know
it's good. That's it, mate.
Questions for both angles, mate.
Get the camera. To be honest with you, Jono, I think that what worries me here is the fact that if he does move on, we've got a team that's so identical to this man's vision of football. So these players won't get the same tune out a different manager, or vice versa, sorry. The players that we've got are very, you could actually pick 8 or 9 of them, you could say that's the exact type of player Ange Postecoglou wants in their team. Doesn't mean a new manager with a different formation is going to get the same tune at them. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if I talk to you, if you're a 4-4-2 man and you got 2 strikers, are you going to be getting the benefit of Maeda? Are you going to be getting the benefit of Ali Wabada? Is he a guy that's going to be overlapping and things like that? I'm not entirely sure. See things like that, and that's what worries me, is there's no a contingency plan that involves the same type of football. That's what I was talking about, director of football stuff for Ange Postecoglou. If you've got a philosophy, I think that philosophy can last 10 years in football. I know football evolves and it changes. I mean, with 3-5-2 for about 5-6 years there in football, it was seemed to be the modern thing. And then it went back to a 4-4-2, and then we've seen teams doing a 4-2-2-2, which Celtic tried in the late 90s under John Barnes, and those teams were trying it over Europe, and if you actually look at it actually can work. If you're a dominating team, that system can work, and you can also be quite defensive with that setup as well. But no, I agree with your point, John, that you think if you're a O'Neill when you're signing Lennon, that they might go with you. You know what I'm talking about, and I did get your point, because that's always a worry. What I will say is, I think the bigger players like Kyogo, I think his age will go against him, which is good for us. I think a Hatate is going to go regardless, because he's just too good. And your Jota probably in the same boat. And a lot of the other players, I think, are at a very high level, but I think their level of performance is elevated by the manager picking players to play in an exact system that suits their style. I'm not sure that another manager gets that tune at them, if that makes sense.
I know it does make sense. Just before we get Big McGinley on for the old quiz, we'll go through this one for Brown Warrior. I don't know if you've seen, there's going to be an evening. I'll go at you, Mark, because I know you're shooting off before sudden death, mate. So obviously Scott Brown and Mikael Lustig are doing an evening with at the Hydro. I thought that was quite cool, because all the proceeds go to the Celtic Foundation. Not that they're short of a bob or two, but still, they're giving their time, and they'll know that by doing that, the amount of money raised, and I think selfless things like that are still much appreciated, particularly by former players. You know what I mean? It just shows you how much the club means to them. I watched the interview, Brown Warrior. I did watch it where Brown was obviously talking about the present day, and he said the most important thing that Cal Mack did was he adapted to what the new manager wanted. He goes, and I think he was talking about Dyla. He says, you can have it sometimes when players go, oh, I don't really want to change what we do. I think he's talking about that nucleus that wrongly, in my opinion, didn't want to play ball with Dyla's diets and methods and things like that because they thought they knew best. Whereas Cal Mack, he was like, he's adapted to him and he's actually flying as a captain now. He goes, I just couldn't be happier for him. He was very, as Brown says, very revealing about him. And, firstly, obviously cannot wait to give Bruni the send-off that he deserves. When you actually was doing the interview, it reminded you that he left under the cloud of that terrible season, but remember with no fans either. Do you know what I mean? And that was just so not befitting of the service he'd given the club. So I'm hoping that Hydro will become a sellout and everyone sort of gets to say bye, as does Bruni, by the way, vice versa, obviously. But yeah, him talking about obviously now as a bystander, watching on Mark, and he's sort of going, wow, Cal Mack's completely adopted the manager's methods, and that's why he's been a success as a captain. He also says it's because the manager, whoever the manager is, you have to follow them. He's probably having a wee shot across the ball at his own team as well there. But do you know what I mean? I think that message rings true. If you all get on board with what the manager's ideologies are, provided they're good ideologies, that is, it'll work. It'll work. You just need that buy-in. And we're getting that buy-in from the most experienced in the team, Callum McGregor's and James Forrest, right down to the younger new starts that have came in, like your Abadas you were just referring to, Mark.
Well, I mate, because I think if you remember quite good back, I mean, you had players, we've watched programmes like Open Goal and things like that, and they're talking about how the manager was bringing in new diets and the players weren't up for it. You had Charlie Mulgrew laughing about it, and you had Lee Griffiths sitting on a bench at a Celtic match with a tea cake. I know that was funny at the time for a lot of folk. I was a bit disgusted that my player was sitting with a chocolate tea cake. He should be a 24-year athlete on 20 grand a week at Celtic, in my opinion. And just something, Roy Dyler, he'll probably sit Roy Dyler one day and look back at his time at Celtic and say, Joe, what, that could have been different for me if the players just gave me the chance. I mean, maybe they didn't respect him. Maybe the players knew, but we all knew about how he was supposed to be number 2 to Roy Keane. And that brings the same baggage, boys. I think that kind of muffles your voice in the dressing room and things like that. Even bringing in somebody like John Collins, well respected by the Celtic players, but there's a bit of aggro between him and Scott Brown when they were at Hibs as well. There was issues with that, and that just doesn't create a good harm. But we spoke about it a while ago about how the players and the fans and they're all one. You didn't get that impression back then, boys. Say that it's like,
Mark, how difficult is it though, mate? How difficult is it for a manager to have that line? Because we always also talk about how Ange has got, like, you don't want to cross the boss and all this. Do you know what I mean? So he still implements that fear factor, in my opinion. But it must be so difficult, particularly in this year, 2023, of managing, like, what are more sensitive characters these days. Human beings are sensitive souls these days, Mark. Do you know what I mean? It must be hard to be in complete authority, but also, like, sort of massaging their egos at the same time. It's not an enviable task. I mean, it's hard enough for you 10 on the fucking bus.
No, a manager can only pull down the branch. You've got to grab the fruit, mate. And I think what's happening is you see a lot of Celtic players that they've seen something new, because I've also football as before. They've seen something new to begin with. I think he's told them, listen, see when this clicks, you will buy into this. You will be that 10-year-old boy that was playing the streets and just loved the game. Like Joe Hart said at the age of 36, I didn't even think I was ever going to be excited about go to training again. He says, but I'm more. He's brought players to love football again. And see, when you've got that in your squad, boys, you're going to get the best of that individual. And that's where it comes in, where you've got young boys and guys in their mid-20s like the Kyogos and late 20s like Giacomakis. These players are developing even at that age, because they've not went in there and says, look, I'm here to evolve into this team and progress out within this squad. They've knew for day one, this guy's going to make me better. Now, if you're a football player, a professional, and you've reached any heights, if a manager's going to work with you to make you better, you don't need to be scared of them. the respect you have for that guy and that guy's philosophy will just take you through the gears every week. You get Carl McGregor, a player who I thought was a Rolls Royce, a term because you were too much under Rodgers. I think he's a better player than what he was then. And
that's frightening.
And he is evolving. And we spoke about Taylor. We spoke about Ralston. Players who were ready to go. And it's all over the park. I don't think Celtic have got a player that hasn't come in and been at a better level since I started working with this guy. And that's where the fear factor comes in, but that's where that level of respect comes in that players want to play for. And that's how lucky we are to have this guy. And just enjoy him while he's here, because I think he's the biggest motivator in players I've ever seen at Celtic. Whereas Rodgers was a tactician, masterclass. O'Neill was just a genius that knew how to work the system. But I love this guy, and I like he's going with Phil. He's got a couple of questions he wants John to get rang.
You know it. Judge, a pleasure to have you on, mate.
That's plenty for you, Mark. Off you, Bob.
I really enjoyed the night. You boys take care. Good luck, Jono. Right. Yeah, mate, will you?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
And as one departs, one enters.
Oh, God.
And the substitution board goes up. There you go.
And the cloud of doom arrives over Jonathan Boyce. Because right now, he is in last chance saloon. How many more weeks we got, Phil? 10 weeks or something?
Oh, I mean, whenever the football season ends, so...
I know the Scottish Cup's the 3rd of June, Jonathan, but I mean, really, sudden death to be wrapped up by then, I think, you know.
Sometime in May, I haven't put a final date in yet, but yeah, it's getting to that point where we're running out of games.
It's 12-8 or 4 behind.
Boxing match, and my coach would be tempted to throw in the white towel, but there's still an opportunity for a comeback that Rocky Balboa would be proud of, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
Phil is going to keep me right with a good question tonight, Phil. None of this international stuff.
I think it's quite a good one, to be fair. I think it is quite a decent question. But yeah, we'll see what happens in the next few minutes then, because yes, it is that time. And it is a Monday this week. We're actually on the right night tonight. It is time for a bit of old sudden death. The Brothers Boyce ready to engage in another battle, the little penalty shootout competition. So yes, as Russell did say, the score currently is 12-8, 4 points in it. We've been here before, and Jonathan did get it back to level pegging, but he really, really needs it now because, as I say, games are running out. So yeah, I will get all the aesthetics set up, guys, where you can do your usual talking trash to each other at this point while I get things ready.
Well, it's not talking trash, Phil, because I live in a world of facts, and that's the thing. Right now, it's 12-8. It's an unassailable lead for the Bhoycie boy. The youngster thought he was going to claw it back. Actually, the gap's bigger than it's ever been since sudden death began.
It's the same as it's ever been. It was never more than 4 points at any point. I thought they came back from 4.
So is it the biggest it's ever been? It's never been bigger than 4. Why are you arguing? It's a fact. I just said.
Well, I don't know about that. It's been this way before, is what I'm saying. And I pulled it back.
Aye, and then you put it. You're back to square one. It's like snakes and ladders for you, Jonathan. You climb a wee ladder and then you just slip right back down the snake. That's what's happening again.
Well, we'll see. We'll see about that.
If it becomes 5, you're going to need to concede. If it becomes 5 tonight, I would just give up.
There is absolutely no danger of a white flag ever being raised in your direction as long as I've got breath in my body. You can forget it.
Well, now that you've got that all out your system, let's get cracking so I can hear you guys. You can obviously hear me.
Yep.
I'm guessing the comments on the going mental saying that the volume's all over the place, so I guess we're good. So yes, Russell, do you wish to go first or second tonight, sir?
I'll go first.
I had a feeling that'd be the answer, but I need to ask it anyway. Okay, tonight's question has a very generous 28 answers compared to last week, which was only 14, so we're doubling it this time. Very, very simple question, really. Just name me any Celtic player who's received a red card in a competitive game from 2010 to present day. 28 different Celtic players have Well, I was going to say achieved that. It's not only an achievement to get sent off, but yeah, that's what I'm looking for, guys. Any Celtic player who's had his marching orders from 2010 to present day.
Shannon Beaton.
I'd be so disappointed if what he's said near Beaton. They're like, come on.
Shocker, eh?
He's a go-to. He's mandatory.
I am going to go Josip Šuminović.
Yeah, Šuminović, yeah, the Douglas Ross. Red card. Moment.
That's right. Struggling with this one, to be honest. Struggling tonight. Since 2010.
Yeah, so for the list that I found was for Lennon's first season, which began midway through 2010 up to present day. So, yep.
Fucking hell. Callum McGregor?
Yeah, Callum McGregor's had red cards, yep. Goal
Yeah,
in this season, in fact.
I was at it. Professional foul.
Last man tackle, yep.
Yeah, right. Professional foul. I'll take one that we had on Bustalgia a couple of weeks ago. Emilio Izagiri in the League Cup final.
Emilio Izagiri, yes, indeed. He has had this match on all those.
Oh yeah, we'll stick with that then. We'll go Frimpong.
Very Frimpong, yes, indeed. Oh my days.
I will go for Chris Commons. I believe he got sent off in the game that Lennon was attacked at Tynecastle.
He did, yeah. It was a second booking for celebrating. I think it was a second booking for
celebrating. It was right into the crowd and got sent off. Yep.
Yes, he did. Well done. Good one.
Chris Hire?
Christopher Ayer's the correct answer, yes.
Oof. I'm not sure about this one. I know he's been sent off, but since 2010, Scott Brown.
Of course. Kicked Neymar, didn't he? The game that Neymar hates us for.
So he did.
Yep.
Fraser Forster.
Yeah. Yep. Scottish Cup game at Ibrox, right? Right, Jono, you need this to take it to sudden death.
Yeah, trying to think of another one that I know definitely has. I'm gonna throw one in there. This is a bit more of a guess. Dedrick Boyata.
Dedrick Boyata is correct. Yeah, gets sent off in a League Cup game by John Beaton and Brendan Rodgers here. Yeah. So we're into something definite. So a maximum of another 5 guesses each. I don't want to keep us here all night. And if we need to do a tiebreaker, we're going to do a tiebreaker.
I don't know this. I can't picture it. I'm just going to stick with the goalkeepers and say Craig Gordon.
Craig Gordon, yeah. He was sent off against Inverness in the Josh Meekings handball game.
He been sent off in one other game. Did he not karate kick somebody in one game, Craig Gordon?
No, he didn't get sent off. That's essentially, but he did come in and karate kick somebody. Aye, he did.
Yeah. Madness. A couple of other ideas in here. So now I guess Sivachenko.
Eric Sviatchenko. Oh, it's an interesting one, and it's unfortunately, Jonathan.
Oh, no!
It's a wrong answer, mate. Eric Sviatchenko. I mean, it's a logical guess, it is, but Sviatchenko never got a red card for us, unfortunately. So that, unfortunately, means that Russell has went 5.
Did Lustig get one?
Yes,
Lustig, that's him as well. Man.
What about Charlie Mulgrew?
Charlie Mulgrew is the correct answer, yep.
Kelvin Wilson.
Kelvin Wilson is another option as well.
Kelvin Wilson I had as well.
Kelvin Wilson wasn't the right answer.
Oh, Effie Ambrose must have actually.
Effie Ambrose, yeah.
Effie Ambrose, fucking hell, it's an obvious one.
I will give you the list of the ones that didn't get a few shockers in here. Anthony Stokes gets sent off. Bio gets sent off in a Europa League game. He came on with 5 minutes to go and got sent off. Yeah.
Remember that.
Now, as Jonathan always points out, you're a bit rubbish when it comes to the modern day ones. You always forget about the current ones. Carl Starfelt gets sent off against Ross County last season.
Never think of this current team. That's
in the game that Tony Ralston scored the 98th minute winner, I believe Starfelt gets sent off in that game. I think it's that one.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Chaduri gets sent off at Ibrox in a game. Mulgrew, who you mentioned there. Daniel Mastorovic, the Sion game. Remember that Sion
qualifier? But I couldn't think of the game.
Another one from this season, the most recent one. David Turnbull, when he decided to fly kick the goalkeeper for absolutely no reason in the last minute against St Johnstone at Christmas time. A cross came in and he just jumped up. Instead of going for a header, he just fly kicked the keeper right in the face. And David Turnbull.
Who was that?
David Turnbull.
Oh, yeah. I remember
That's
that.
the most recent one. Effie Ambrose was mentioned there. James Forrest, he's always a good go-to answer for the goals one.
Really?
He's also a go-to answer for sendings off. Yeah.
No.
He's too nice.
He got beat by Salzburg in a Europa League game under Brendan, and he gets sent off for giving a penalty. Terrible challenge. Jeremy Toljan is a correct answer. Joe Ledley is a correct answer. Michael Lustig, who you mentioned. Olivia and Cham is a right answer. It's St Mirren. Ryan Christie, he is a red card at Livingston.
Oh, yeah.
Thomas Rogner, Victor Wanyama also gets sent off in a game at Ibrox, and Virgil van Dijk is a correct answer. There we go.
It's not even too good to be sent off, Virgil van Dijk.
I know. It's probably a beautiful red card.
It was.
What about that, though, Jonathan? 13-8. Is there any comeback? Can you honestly pull this back? You need to win 6 weeks. Oh, no way. Like, it's done. It's done, mate.
We're just setting ourselves up for a miracle here. I still believe in miracles. I'm not going to give up the ghost quite yet.
Rocky Balboa style, mate. You said it earlier on.
It's not over till it's over.
Mm-hmm.
It's not over till it's over.
I'm delighted, man. Delighted. Anyway, that wraps up the Monday Club. Phil, how are you anyway, pal? You good?
Yeah, I'm great, mate. I'm doing fine. Delighted with the result yesterday. So we plough on now to Wednesday. Looking forward to getting back to Celtic Park. We've midweek game under the lights against the Jambos. So I'll be right.
That will be good. Fancy we'll go to a wee bus stop tomorrow night?
Aye.
Not a bus stop. We'll do a wee bus stop.
Just give us a shout whenever, mate, and we'll get that done.
Boyce's nuggets, you know.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes,
should be good fun. Anyway, that wraps up the Monday Club. Thanks to how many there's been watching live. It's over 180 most of the show. So a big thank you to you all. Remember, hit that like button on your way out. If you want to subscribe, please do. There is loads of subscribers right now. Become a member if you want. All that carry on. Anyway, I will let you get on. Have a brilliant week, everyone. We will be back, though. As I said, you'll be a pre-recorded bus stop that you'll see tomorrow night. And then we'll have PMP again on Wednesday, when hopefully we're celebrating being even further top of the table.
Well, you've all that stuff at the start. You know, they won't be playing Tina Turner on the coach on the way home, will they?
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I'm like in the media now. And you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan. He's a Rangers puppet. He's a cheerleader. That's what he is.